welcome to all of our alumni joining us. Welcome. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Greg Leperati. I'm Associate Director of Alumni Relations here at Baruch. So glad to have you here with us this afternoon. I'm excited to have our friends at Phaidon International here as well. This will be a super informative event. You're going to meet people from Phaidon specialist teams, Selby Jennings, Glocomms, and Larson Maddox. Learn about today's job market, how to best work with experienced hire recruiters. And as mentioned in the event description, all those who are logged into this event will be able to share their resume for reviews by officials at Phaidon. We will provide a link for you later in the event to do so. In the meantime, I'd like to go over some quick house rules here. We ask that you please keep your microphones muted so that no errant noises distract our speakers throughout the presentation. Please also direct all of your questions to the chat bar, and we will get to all of them during the Q&A at the end of the presentation. Now I would like to introduce Kareem Baker, the Managing Director at Selby Jennings. Kareem has been with Selby Jennings since 2013 as one of the original members of the brand when it first made its debut in the States. Originally starting out as a recruiter focused on the risk management space, Kareem quickly transitioned into a key leader within the wider business. Today, he leads Selby Jennings' business and New York office, where he's responsible for the continuous growth of the brand. And grow it he has. He's scaled Selby Jennings to now more than 140 consultants in NYC, 200 plus across the states. He and his team have impacted the lives of more than 750 candidates in the past 12 months alone, and work with some of the most prestigious financial institutions in the world, ranging from tier 1 investment banks to multi-billion-dollar hedge funds. Kareem, the floor is yours.
Cool, thank you for that. I feel like I now know a lot more about myself as well after that intro. But yeah, I think just first and foremost, hello and thank you to everyone for taking the time to attend today. Also, a big thank you to Greg and Janet, for putting this together. This is going to be our second year doing this event in particular, and I think our fifth year now that the team has some way, shape, or form partnered with Baruch, whether it be for post-grad, undergrad, or alumni sort of events. Yeah, for today, we're going to be kicking off with a number of, overviews in the market, the Phaidon International business and who we are as a specialty recruitment business as a whole, and diving into some of the key brands that we'll be focusing on today. So I guess if we can start off with the presentation, we'll kick into that. So yeah, on to the next slide, please. So yeah, basically for the event today, as I mentioned, right, kicking off with the Phaidon and business and the brands that sit within it. We're going to be hearing from the Selby Jennings specific individuals covering the quant analytics and investment banking markets. Following that, we're going to go into more of the fintech vertical that we cover, both on an FS and non-FS basis, covered by the guys in Glocomms. And last but not least, our newest brand, Larson Maddox, which was a spin out from Selby Jennings, just about, I think, a month old at this point. They cover the regulatory and legal talent market. You'll hear from two people there on what's going on and trends, across the US that we're seeing now. Cool. On to the next slide, please. Boom. So again, here's some familiar faces. Again, for those that attended last year, you might see some people that you recognize. For those that have again, worked with different levels of seniority with Baruch, Chris is someone that has been around for quite some time. The individuals that you'll be speaking with today bring, over 6 years of recruitment experience to the table, worked pretty closely with both, top tier clients and candidates. So it can give you some in-depth perspective. We do encourage you guys to ask questions along the way. If you hear something that kind of, perks your ears up or anything like that, by all means, drop it in the chat. We're going to address all questions at the end. And I think we have a solid 20 to 30 minute time gap for, the audience to ask away. And yeah, I'm going to let these guys introduce themselves prior to them starting their segments. So again, you'll hear a little bit more background on them and so on and so forth. So yeah, kind of diving into our brands on the next slide. This is sort of the suite of Phaidon International services. So Phaidon International is the parent company to 6 specialty talent brands. We basically set out to solve one of the main challenges that businesses face, which is acquiring, attracting, and securing quality talent. What we pride ourselves on doing is finding talent faster and more efficiently than the competition, and building long-lasting, genuine partnerships with our clients where they keep coming back time and time again. And I think the majority of the placements that we've done this year, were with clients and businesses that we've worked with, over the past, 6, 10, and 15 years, dating back to, sort of our inception in the UK. In terms of our coverage, we are predominantly focused on permanent roles. We do have a contracts team that focuses on temporary placements. However, our bread and butter is more so on fixed positions. As we mentioned in the beginning, we're looking at the buy side, hedge funds, asset managers, private equity shops, ranging to insurance companies, top tier investment banks, you name it. If it's in the world of financial services, we're probably covering it. Even within more of the fintech and sort of startup space as well, we do dabble in that domain. Kind of going through the brands on the next slide, kind of, brand by brand, kicking off with Selby Jennings. Selby Jennings is our financial services recruitment business. Our core 8 verticals that we recruit in are listed below. So investment banking, risk management, client analytics and trading, financial technology, investment management, sales and trading, insurance and actuarial services, and also commodities. This was the business that the company was founded, around back in 2004. Our founder, started the Selby Jennings brand out of his, bedroom essentially, was recruiting, from there for 2 years, then made his first 2 hires in 2006. The Phaidon name and sort of the idea to create a parent company and roll out a number of other services and a suite of services came about just before the financial downturn in 2008. And that's when the business really became the Phaidon sort of umbrella company. On to the next slide, please. Is Glocomms. So Glocomms is our sort of flagship technology business. They cover 5 main verticals: cyber, data analytics, software dev and engineering, cloud and infrastructure, and also commercial analytics. These guys kicked off back in 2013. When I joined the company back in 2013, it was, essentially, 10 people in a small office. That was the Phaidon US presence. Fast forwarding to today, we've grown, exponentially, just eclipsing 600 consultants this year across the US, of which I'd say about 100 or so sit within the Glocomms business for us, sitting across 3 different offices in our North American presence. Cool. On to the next slide, please. Larson Maddox, as I mentioned, is our newest brand. We were focused on in-house legal counsel and working with regulatory and compliance individuals within the Selby Jennings business. And the demand from our clients just became so high, and the caliber of candidate that we were working with just became so high that we decided to see if this area had some legs, and it did. Our fastest growing desk and team now launched into its own vertical and brand services. These 3 sectors across all of the industries we cover within Phaidon International. So whether you're sitting in more of a pharma seat, or dealing more so with a non-financial services business, right? We're happy to help within these 3 places. And I'll let Andrew and Anthony kind of talk a bit more about their business model and what they're covering. So cool. On to the next slide is something that we like to kind of kick things off with. Going into the Selby Jennings business, one of the things we do on an annual basis is conduct a job confidence index or survey. So on the next slide, you can kind of see some of the findings there. We essentially survey about 1,600 to usually 2,000 financial services professionals. This was a few months ago, I believe back in May, across the regions that we cover. So North America, APAC, and Europe. And as you can see on the slide, there are some pretty interesting insights. And I think, 3 main points that I had highlighted that, I found, quite intriguing and stood out from years past was, 1, the market is feeling much more optimistic today and this year about the direction of where candidates' careers can go and the job opportunities that are out there. It's no secret, it's currently a candidate-driven market at the moment. There are boatloads of jobs open. The talent pool is relatively small for a number of reasons. So obviously, compared to 2020, when things seemed a bit bleak, everyone seems to be on the up and up and very optimistic as what's to come. The second point that I wanted to highlight was on the bottom right. 64% of people are willing to relocate from where they are now for a new role. Most notably, we're finding that the South and Southeast, so the Dallas, Austin, Texas region, as well as Charlotte, Tampa, Miami, even Jacksonville seems to be a pretty attractive place for people to be. Cost of living factors are definitely on the horizon there. But again, in comparison to last year, where you couldn't get anyone to leave their homes, no one wanted to even think about an excellent opportunity paying 2x their comp. Now these people are actually sticking their heads back up and saying, what, let's get out of these major cities. Let's get down to somewhere there that might be brand new to me, and they're going to move again. And the third topic that I want to speak on was that more than half of the people that we spoke with were expecting to get paid more, or will test the waters at least to see what's out there. And this year has been tricky for us on the recruitment front because we're dealing with a lot of passive talent. We're dealing with people that are just kind of dipping their toes in the water, so to speak. They want to see what's out there. They want to see, what's their street value if they were to make a move. And I think now is probably the best time to make a move, right? Like, these banks, these hedge funds, all the rest of it are willing to pay top dollar for talent. People that, were, lifers per se at one firm that were sitting there for 5, 10, 15 plus years are, getting offered double to cross the street and, take on the exact same position and move laterally. These guys in the coming presentations will talk about lateral hires and so on and so forth. But also this year, I've seen the biggest increase in people moving not laterally, but actually moving forward in title as well, which is something that tends to be pretty rare and unheard of. It's usually like a VP to a VP or a director to a director, associate to associate type transition. So that kind of plays well into the next slide that I wanted to highlight. The top motivating factors for people to move at the moment is higher salary, right? It's almost 70% of the group is motivated by more money. Career progression has dropped down to 57% compared to last year, and just under half are saying that they want a new challenge. This whole slide and graphic is pretty interesting compared to last year, where remote work and work from home life balance and flexibility was the number one motivator last year. People wanted to be able to stay home. If they're going to make a move to a new opportunity, they wanted to know that there was some sort of guarantee that they could still remain in the work from home setting. Now I think we've all seen that that's become the norm, right? It's I think unheard of to step into a business that has zero flexibility around working from home and just adapting to what is now the new work-life balance that everyone's kind of been adapted and adjusted to. So yeah, I think that's pretty much what we found from this. If anyone wants to see more of it, we do have some more highlights. It's a pretty thick document and a lot of finds that came off the back of it after this presentation. More than happy to share the full global findings with you guys if anyone finds it necessary. But yeah, now I'm going to hand it over to Jake, who's going to cover the investment banking trends and what's going on over there. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Kareem. And yeah, so I'm going to start us off first here. My name is Jake Schneider. I'm an associate vice president and lead our investment banking team here in New York. And yeah, I'm just going to go over some of the investment banking trends that we have seen over the last year. And yeah, we truly are experiencing right now one of the most dynamic hiring markets within investment banking. I'm sure a lot of my colleagues that are going to be coming up to discuss their space are going to be saying something pretty similar. In terms of pay being on the rise, we've seen increased compensation bands across the board at all levels. And it's been a pretty drastic increase. Base salaries increasing all levels and sign-on bonuses for what we've seen for junior talent. Bankers that are being made whole in order to make a move before year end and before their bonuses pay out. And typically and historically, what we have seen is at the more junior level, like the analysts and associates, we haven't seen it as much in terms of sign-on bonuses, but it just goes to show how competitive the market is. Another note on that is just retention has never been more important. Banks are putting just as much effort and resources into retention as they are in recruitment in order to avoid losing their business critical talent. In terms of just some of the hottest sectors that we have been seeing, I definitely would say not only from a deal and M&A activity perspective, but also from a hiring perspective. The TMT and FIG space has been the most active. TMT and tech is just always an industry that's going to be, at the top of the charts in terms of not only deal flow, but also hiring. But this has been a time, especially for this quarter right now within the FIG space, that we've seen all our clients, whether it's the specialized boutiques to the top bulge bracket, all looking at all levels in terms of building out their FIG team. What I would say on that end too is, with that being said, a big thing in terms of what we have been seeing is just the increase in number of junior bankers has been the highest priority. Reason being, adding more junior bankers just reduces the workload to existing junior staff and also allows junior bankers to focus on fewer live deals and not be stretched as thin. So this has been a focus for a lot of our clients just across the board, to not only help the senior bankers that may want to have additional resources, but also for the other juniors that are looking to have additional resources at the junior level. And on that end as well, what we've been seeing just in terms of candidates setting themselves apart from the competition, banks normally slow down during hiring during this time of the year. However, things have never been busier across investment banking. A few tips that I give and what we have been seeing have been a big success is just catering your resume to the specific role and opportunity. And what we have been seeing is, given a lot of this being in a more remote capacity, a lot of our clients are looking for more like the direct plug and play candidates and bankers. So if you're applying or you're interviewing for a specific firm with an industry focus, making sure to cater your resume to that, whether it's like a healthcare investment banking role or a TMT position. And it's been going a long way to differentiate yourself from maybe a candidate that has more of like a generic background. And then what I would say is, looking ahead to 2022, what to expect. One being the resurgence within the restructuring industry and restructuring space. This time last year, it was something where M&A was kind of put on a freeze when the pandemic first kind of went into effect, and restructuring really picked up. Given how active it was, there was obviously a significant slowdown more recently, but a lot of our clients have been beginning to reach out and look to continue to build that out, anticipating a busy 2022. And on that end as well, in terms of just industries as a whole, we're going to be seeing a lot more movement where MDs looking and starting their own firms, which is going to be creating just more of a market cap there. So yeah, that is it for me. I'm going to now let Chris discuss the quantitative analytics trends that he's seen.
Perfect. Thanks, Jake. Appreciate that. Oh, sorry. Yeah, just really quickly as an introduction, my name is Chris. I'm a VP manager for our quantitative analytics team. I help oversee our quants business across the US. So just a few things for me to touch on is the digital asset space. I'll then talk about fixed income trading, as well as vol and HFT, and then kick it to Kariska, who also is one of the senior leaders in our New York office. So really quickly, I actually just came back from a trading show in Chicago. Chicago trading show, kind of goes without saying. Typically is what is a really large prop market known for traditional asset class trading and pit trading, et cetera, back in the day. But I was really surprised to see that probably about 90% of the conference was geared around cryptocurrency and the insurgence of digital assets. And it's really just, I think, one of the biggest things that we've seen in the quantitative, analytics, research, and trading space. And actually 40% of all of our placements this financial year has been within some crypto firm, whether it's, a exchange, a trading house, fintech, et cetera. So I think that market is definitely going to be something over the next, 12 to 24 months that only grows. And a lot of that is around the, trading aspect. There's DeFi, there's yield farming, there's NFTs. So, I mean, that's just a big area we've seen as a growth space in the quant market. And you'll see a lot of, large institutional players getting into the space as well too. Big hedge fund names building up new crypto arms, new trading operations. And yeah, that's something that I would say if anybody has a focus on, or maybe if anybody is trading or has a PA, we come to find that people actually do a lot of things in this space they never put on their CV. So my recommendation in that space would be just to make sure something is there if you're doing it, if it's a hobby, if it's a PA, because that market is something that a lot of people in traditional assets are pivoting to with just maybe a couple months worth of coverage or experience. Second from that, fixed income trading, it's been, I would say, probably the second biggest market that we have like this year, not only specifically within systematic credit, but fixed income RV and also bond trading. I just saw an article come out yesterday. I think it was a bond trading platform called Trulum, where they just announced a 200 million capital raise from big names like BlackRock, et cetera, because of the amount of trading flow happening within bonds and in fixed income, given the electronification of the markets are continuing to develop, et cetera. So that's something we certainly see as a big higher area and a big trend moving forward, not only for funds, but also for broker dealers, investment banks, as they also build up their market making offerings and, security desks, et cetera. And just on the HFT side, I mean, there's been a massive increase in vol. I mean, is that everybody can, see there's the election, there's obviously COVID, there's been the vaccines, et cetera, and fluctuation and so many things happening in the market that's just been making things obviously go crazy. And, traders love vol, HFT firms love vol, and they actually fared the best last year given the least amount of directional alpha, right? So obviously, given the fact that they're in and out of positions, they fared well throughout last year, and it was a record year for a number of HFT firms. So those firms are just reallocating capital into further developing, their trading firms, their trading houses, and whether it's adding traders or adding technologists, that's something that we see as a massive area, not only through this year, but also as we're being told for next year. So those are 3 areas that I would, certainly say the hottest. And, if Chris, I'll kick it from there.
Sure. Thanks, Chris. So I also sit on the same desk as Chris in the quantitative space. We mainly focus on working with hedge funds, prop trading firms, and some of the investment banks as well. Some of the trends that I'm seeing a bit more focused towards the recruitment end is, so firstly, work from home. So typically these funds, even the banks have never really been open to working from home until we all got thrown into it, basically with COVID-19. And since then, they have become more adapted to it and are, more and more open-minded to it. So it's a big thing we're seeing at the moment. Now, don't get me wrong, not everywhere is fully open to it. And a lot of our clients are still saying, when things are, it's approved by the government or probably beginning of next year, we're going to look at bringing everyone back. If they're not already back, we are seeing a lot more flexibility with it, which is great. It widens the candidate pool. We now have candidates on the West Coast interviewing for clients here in New York and vice versa. So it gives a lot more flexibility there. Another trend we're seeing is a bit of an interaction with more the tech giants and the FANG companies. So essentially, it's typically been two very separate markets, the quant finance space and the tech companies. We're now seeing a lot of transferable skills between the two. So people who typically have those strong, programming abilities might have picked a career path to do with either going into tech or quant. Now we're seeing them, a lot of those companies poaching good quant finance guys and vice versa. So that's a big drive at the moment, which has typically not been the case, but we're seeing more and more of those skills are transferable. And then lastly, a big thing we're seeing with our clients in the hedge fund space and the banking space as well is diversity and inclusion. I know it's a big theme across a lot of companies, but typically we see, there generally is a lot more male candidates in this space. So a lot of our clients are trying to bridge that gap there and put a bit more emphasis on hiring with the more diverse candidates, including obviously females in that. So that's a big push as well that we've seen in the past year, if not longer. So that's, everything on the quant space for now. If you have any questions, please feel free to write it in the chat. And I'm going to pass over to Katie and Glocomms.
Thank you, Chrissy. Hi, everybody. So my name is Katie Austin. I am a cybersecurity recruitment consultant within the Glocomms team. Obviously I can hand it over to my colleague Agni shortly, but first I'll tell you a little bit about what we've really been seeing in the market over the past year and a half or so. Slide, please. Thank you. So in terms of what we're seeing is really the highest paying skill sets, or the skill sets that have been in the highest demand: application security for sure, cloud security, and then DevSecOps. Ultimately, I think individuals who can bring these kind of more technical skills to the table, all tying back to efficiency, getting infrastructure to be more hybrid in terms of being both kind of on-prem and then also in the cloud is extremely valuable to our clients. I think kind of what Chrissy was saying too, in terms of having transferable skills. We've seen a lot of people who have maybe more of a kind of like IT audit or like tech risk sort of background still being of interest to people that, I guess, to teams that are more kind of in the information security space, just because there's a lot of blending going on as far as internally in organizations being able to speak. They just are all kind of like working together now as things being more, I guess, kind of divided in the past. In terms of having, I guess, kind of in terms of blending, so like with privacy and security, those, I mean, I think those spaces are definitely merging, which is a lot to do with like kind of the big data and machine learning. So like if you think about having unauthorized access to our data with our cell phones and a lot of other technologies that we are using, a lot of those programs are working together internally, whereas in the past they were a lot more divided. So as far as opportunities, people with those background and skill sets are definitely of value to organizations. We've had people recently who maybe are working more, I guess, kind of like in manufacturing as an example, but they've gotten an opportunity. We had somebody, I think, with a background in like medical devices, but she was working in the tech risk space and ended up getting a job within financial services just because she understood the technology piece, but she also, had a really, really good strategic background and being able to think at, a high level. So that's something that we're seeing in terms of, I'm sure you guys are familiar with the SolarWinds and Colonial Pipeline hacks. Those kind of the industrial control systems space is one that we're seeing a lot of growth in over the last, just this half year alone. There's been a 41% increase in vulnerabilities. So in terms of opportunities there for individuals to, go in and again, kind of really be able to pinpoint any sort of gaps or areas where, they need to be focusing more on security. That's a really, really great space to go into as well. And then for just kind of what I was saying earlier, there's a lot of internal reorganization, consolidation, and kind of like blending of, I would say like tech risk assessment, information security, and even kind of the working with like the threat intelligence space as well. They're all, I think, working together a lot more now, as opposed to being very divided in the past to try to make things a lot more efficient in that regard. So definitely trying to take advantage of different people's skill sets and bringing it, all together to the table. So yeah, I'll hand it over to Agni now to talk to you guys about the data science space.
Perfect. Thanks, Katie. I'm Agni. As a quick intro, I spent the last 5 years, prior to this year, in the London market in the tech scene. I now am VP of the data analytics team at Glocomms. I guess the reason I mentioned London is as a high level comment across both industry or both on a global landscape, the appetite for data technologists has definitely been on the rise over the last 12 months. I guess taken more seriously from a technology perspective. Chris could mention it beforehand. We're seeing a lot more of a demand for kind of research orientated people in both the sort of FANG businesses that we work with, but also the smaller startups that kind of want to have more of a competitive edge. I think the startup scene is a lot more mature in the US from beforehand, and they are willing to pay. And I'll just touch on it at my last point, but they're willing to pay a lot more to poach these kind of quantitative type people from what we've historically seen going to the more hedge fund type career routes in the past. I guess the second point I wanted to touch on is, like I mentioned earlier, I think the data scene in general has become more of a bigger job market. For example, to give you context, we're seeing new business areas evolve in the data space. So machine learning operations, as one example, is a pretty new space that we've seen really explode over the last 12 months. We've made, I think, 25% of our business there, which didn't really exist 24 months ago. And I think as the data scene continues to grow, we're going to see a lot more niche roles and types of positions come out of it. So I think as a job seeker right now, getting into the field, it's never been a better time. And also, we're also seeing, whereas before in academics was a huge thing, and having to have a STEM related degree to become a data scientist, for example, we're seeing a lot more conversion rates from different types of degrees into more bootcamp type programs. And it's a positive sign for all things tech in that sense. And I guess lastly, just to go over all those points, obviously, given the demand for people, we're seeing salaries be pretty ridiculous over the last 24 months. When I say 70%, I mean total compensation. So, base, bonus plus equity. We work with a lot of startups here at Glocomms. So there is, the comp packages are very different, but, I'm sure the market's inflated to an extent because, as Kareem mentioned earlier, it's a candidate-driven market right now, but I'm pretty confident that the runway for the next 24 months will be pretty similar. And, I think just as an overarching comment, it's never been a better time to get into data science right now. But yeah, I'll hand over to the guys at Larson Maddox to talk you through the reg and legal scene.
Yeah, thanks, Agni. If you can just slide, please. Thank you. So yeah, my name is Andrew Hastings. I head up the U.S. regulatory recruitment efforts for us at Larson Maddox, formerly Selby Jennings, as Kareem mentioned. So, started the team about 4 years ago, from pretty much scratch on the legal and compliance front, and have grown that to be a pretty substantial part of our New York business. I think that speaks to the market itself, that we were able to grow it. And, from a compliance perspective, I've noticed a few key themes, and I mentioned those on the next slide in terms of the things I've noticed within the financial services world. I'm focused it mostly there, and I'll touch upon some other industries, but that's part of the beauty of our space is we're able to service all of the potential companies and industries that have been mentioned thus far, and more from a regulatory standpoint, because most businesses are regulated in some fashion, and we see that increasing even more so when it comes to consumer protection. One that Chris talked about a lot, the cryptocurrency and digital asset space, that is kind of the hot button topic right now within the financial services world, especially from a regulatory standpoint. Just a lot of uncertainty about how that's going to be regulated and what sort of laws are going to get put in place in terms of protections. So there's plenty of opportunity there for folks coming from a traditional financial services background to make the jump, just because there just aren't enough people to service, the cryptocurrency firms that are popping up left and right. Additionally, there's been a lot of changes in regulations, the past 10 years, kind of since the financial crisis. That's kind of where compliance has started to, pick up. And a couple of years ago, it was all about the swap dealer world and Reg F, more consumer protection stuff. And now the new AML Act has passed last year, so we see a lot of work within the financial crimes world, coming up. And CPRA, which is the California Privacy and Rights Act, that is kind of the U.S. take on GDPR, which is Europe is ahead of us in a lot of ways, but in privacy they're certainly ahead. And I definitely see the world of privacy and data as it reflects to Glocomms, comments in the past, couple presenters, that will also be a big uptick on the regulatory side in the U.S. when it comes to privacy and all the concerns and regulations that must be coming down the pipe there. And additionally, just other kind of hot button topics in the world, the sanctions and international trade, with all the foreign policy changes that have been going on, that affects supply chain and manufacturing, that affects financial services. That's sort of a widespread issue. And ESG has been a pretty, popular theme in the asset management and financial services world, probably number 2 to the cryptocurrency space. And ESG is great in theory, and there'll be a lot of firms that build ESG practices and launch that. But there will have to be some sort of regulations surrounding what qualifies and how do firms label and monitor and control that. Just again, for the purposes of kind of consumer protection and false advertising. So, the market has been extremely active across really all levels for us in the regulatory space. And that spreads also into, I didn't even really touch upon the finance and kind of the regulatory finance, reporting and tax world too. A lot of M&A going on, has caused some redundancies. So the market is pretty, busy in terms of, folks building out practices, building out divisions and teams to address these concerns on a proactive basis. And then there's always going to be the folks in the banks and the firms that are playing a bit more catch up when it comes to folks that have already been fined or regulated. There's always a heavy compliance need there too. So that's a little bit about the regulatory and compliance space. We also cover operations, finance, things along those ends too. And I'll kick it over to my colleague, Anthony, who spearheads our legal team.
Okay, great. So my name is Anthony Hanna. I've been with the business for about 6 years now. Actually started on the risk management team within Selby Jennings in 2 years. 2 years ago, moved over to the legal side, now under Larson Maddox. So I lead our legal recruitment team here in New York and Boston as well. So bouncing off, first bullet point there from my colleague Jake's points earlier around the M&A market. It's been a record year for mergers and acquisitions in terms of dollar amounts and the volume of the transactions. So law firms have, really had a pretty big battle looking for corporate associates and associates with mergers and acquisitions experience to come on board. Just given that uptick, and even on the in-house side, we work with companies across financial services and life sciences and the technology spaces as well. We've certainly seen a need for individuals with M&A experience. A lot of times at larger companies in these spaces that might be looking to acquire companies that maybe didn't do so hot during the pandemic, or just acquire their talent or intellectual property. And kind of take advantage of that, potential fallout from the last year to 18 months. I think in addition to the M&A side, there's been a lot of capital markets activity that's been pretty hot as well. A lot of companies going public and going to the IPO stage more than ever before. And I'm sure you guys have heard the term SPACs thrown around quite a bit this year. Has been certainly a pretty big reason for that happening. And anytime a company goes public, their legal needs change. They have to file certain reports, Exchange Act reports, 10Ks, 10Qs, that sort of a thing. And just the volume of companies that are now going public, we see them hiring more attorneys a bit earlier in their life cycle. Because they need people that can make sure these reports are filed and get them through financing rounds in an efficient time. In addition to that, I think technology's played a pretty important role in the legal market and for legal teams overall. And one of the biggest spaces that we're seeing growth in-house legal teams especially is not just your counsels and paralegals, but more in the support kind of staff, and specifically an area that's called legal operations. So these individuals don't always have a law degree, but a lot of times they will have at least worked in the legal industry, and their job is to make sure that legal teams have the type of tools they need and resources that they need. And a lot of that comes down to the technology that the teams are using. There's been a lot of legal tech and regulatory tech companies that have emerged, I think, in the last 5 years or so. And if it makes a legal team's process easier in terms of redlining a contract, sending comments back and forth, and things of that nature, processes for storing documents and things like that, that sort of legal operations role has become a much more in-demand type of individual in legal teams. Again, you don't need a legal background or a law degree in particular to step into that sort of a role. So if that's something of interest of anyone here, or if someone's in the legal space and maybe doesn't have a law degree and are thinking of, how can I pivot my career or take it in a new direction that's in demand, I think that's certainly a good way to go. On top of that, kind of coming back to what I was saying before in terms of the law firm battle, because there's so much work going on and there's such high activity levels across, all practice groups, whether you're a cybersecurity attorney, an M&A attorney, a corporate and securities attorney, really the last 18 to 24 months have led to a very high demand in these types of attorneys. So earlier this year, the law firm Davis Polk actually raised associate base salaries by $15,000 to $25,000 per year. So coming into this year, first year associates at what we call big law firms made $190K on the base, and now first year associates are making $205K on the base. Once you get to a 5th-year associate level, now that's all the way up to $305,000 on the base, which is a $25K uplift from the year before. Again, I think a similar trend to the investment banking space. There's been a lot of sign-on bonuses, which before haven't really been seen at the sort of associate, junior to mid-level. But now they're pretty common, and it certainly worked. I think we've had people self-admittedly, say they're on the market looking, for a sign-on bonus to move from one law firm to another. I wouldn't suggest that as the only reason to be looking for a move, but compensation has certainly been a way that law firms have tried to attract and retain talent this year. So I think that's it for my section. If I'm not mistaken, we're on to the questions next.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. I've put in the chat the link to upload your resume so that folks on this Zoom can then have their resume reviewed by people at Phaidon. And I have a handful of questions here. I also received a handful directly, so let's run through some of them. First question is in regards to the financial services talent landscape. The question is just simply wondering, why was the talent pool so low?
Sure, I can take that one as I brought it up. Essentially, the world froze during COVID, and a lot of, more so on the sell side, all those big banks and insurance companies kind of just held in place for, I'd say, probably like a solid 6 to 8 months with no active hiring. What we've seen pretty much from March of 21 was every one of our clients that we worked with the past 10 years just showed up at our doorstep at the exact same moment, asking for the exact same thing. So because of that lull in hiring, everyone, turn on the taps essentially all at the same time, looking for the same talent. So again, there's top tier talent, there's mid tier, there's low tier, et cetera, et cetera. So, people are just going after what they value as, top tier talent, as quickly as possible, throwing ridiculous offers at them. And that's essentially what's causing this shortage.
Interesting. Next question is in regards to crypto. Certainly is a super hot topic right now. Is there any specific skill that people should be working on to get them into the crypto world? Or do they simply have to have basic knowledge of trading?
Definitely basic knowledge of trading would help if it's the context of obviously trading that you're looking for. And obviously that's a lot of what's driving the digital asset space. I would go to say that the more you do in your spare time, obviously the better, because it's an emerging market. It's a new space. There's not a lot of things there that are legacy. So everybody that's learning about it is learning about it now, right, at the same time. However, the more that you can show, the better. And ideally, a lot of the work that we're doing is in quantitative trading, people that may have PAs, like personal trading accounts, or have, researched a signal in their spare time, or have developed even, a platform, for a certain, crypto exchange, et cetera. That work in their spare time goes, in direct application to what these firms are doing now and trying to do moving forward, which is a lot different than a traditional trading firm that may have legacy things involved. So anything you can do in your spare time is great. If it's trading, great, but it could be very well engineering and general analytics. Knowledge always helps.
Thank you. And speaking of digital, for digital, is the high demand only in quant and financial assets, or is demand in digital across the board and at all levels?
I can speak to that a little bit as well. I think in the legal space, we've seen that be very active this year. Part of it is somewhat finance related, in that a lot of the companies that we've helped on legal placements in that space, they do like to see individuals with regulatory experience, either with the SEC or the CFTC, or have dealt with derivatives as well. And on top of that, just someone that understands various technology transactions, software licensing agreements, and has experience with drafting and negotiating those sorts of contracts with other counterparties has been sought after in that space as well.
Thank you. The next question has to do with tech. Someone asks, with the new skill set needs, are there more trends for remote working or for higher salaries in tech?
I can speak to that. I think definitely yes. We're seeing a huge amount of actual remote first businesses. So, in the tech startup world, for example, there's actually a handful of businesses that haven't got a physical office. So a remote first mindset is definitely on the rise. I think to answer the question from a sort of more historical side of things on the bigger businesses, we're seeing a definite relaxing of being in the office compared to having, being remote. But, I think the higher skill set, the skill sets that are up and coming, have almost more of a sway of where they're based, right? Because of the lack of the skill in general.
Right. Thank you. Next question here is, what does the landscape look like for business controls, risk management, and audit issue management? Is there a big demand for those types of roles?
Yeah, I think we can, both, Anthony and I can probably touch on that to a certain extent, coming from that background. Yeah, risk has definitely come back with a bit of a vengeance. Audit as well. We were actually retained by two firms this year to execute on 40 plus headcount audit team build outs. Within the risk management space, we saw a pretty bold gold rush, if you will, of hiring that market across credit, operational, and market risk in 2014 to 17, I'd say, and then it kind of cooled off from 18 till now. But yeah, across the board, it seems to have picked up quite aggressively. Again, ranges and skill sets in demand and types of seniority. That sweet spot tends to be that more of a senior associate as well as like a more junior level VP. And yeah, I think now we're probably going to start to see people at that ED, MD level start to make moves this time of year, given that bonus season is coming up. And if someone's on 3, 4, 5, 600,000 all in, they know what their bonus is going to be. Essentially, what that's going to pan out to, once it's going to shake out to in the next couple of months. So they're going to start to dip their toes in the water now to have something lined up, potentially have a bonus bought out by their new employer. So we anticipate, and all the the research we've done looks like risk should be hot for the next 18 to 24 months.
Interesting. Thank you. Next question is, can the team comment on business management / COO roles in sales and trading space?
I can touch upon that. Just based on also commenting on one of the previous questions in the cryptocurrency world, I know I worked with Chris and one of his clients to secure a COO for a up and coming, pretty successful cryptocurrency shop. And answering the previous question, in the compliance world, our regulatory world, a lot of the regulations that are up in the air right now are they're expecting them to be very similar. So they're looking at anyone with securities backgrounds, anyone with experience at compliance at a high frequency shop or a prop shop that are relevant similar businesses. And most of these people have a personal interest on their spare time, on their personal time in the cryptocurrency space, and they can demonstrate that in a variety of ways. But speaking to business management and COO positions, that is always a need as firms grow and scale, and then there's new projects that come up. But also in the startup landscape, especially in cryptocurrency, they need people who have experience scaling businesses or are running businesses from an operational standpoint, just because of the high level of innovation and startups in that space as well.
Thank you very much. This is an interesting legal market question. In the legal market, do you think the raising of associate salaries will hurt the market in a year or two for big loss, since clients will be billed for higher rates and may not want to pay for first-year associates?
That's a great question. I think a lot of law firms had record revenues, in their histories and in the last year or two. So I think, they have kind of money to spend right now, and they really want to take advantage of, how much work really is out there. And it's a copycat industry at the end of the day. So, if one law firm raises the salaries, then the next day, actually the next day, almost all of the other competitor law firms raise the salaries to the exact same level. Obviously, I don't know if clients always know the associates that are kind of working on the transactions, if it's kind of a partner or the senior associates that are the face of things, that are kind of, stamping their name on the work themselves. But it's a great question. I think if, the market is not as hot as it is now, if things cool down and their revenues die down as a result, but their expenses, stay at a high level, it's really interesting to see what will happen. If there's going to be one of the big law firms that is one of the first ones to lower revenues, which I haven't really seen in the last 5-10 years. We'll see. But yeah, it's certainly, I think, a copycat sort of industry. So I'm curious to see how that'll play out myself.
Hey, our alumni asked great questions. That was a really interesting. Next question: what are the demands for the structured finance credit risk space?
So I can grab that one on the credit risk side of things. So structured finance, again, I think that kind of pairs with our investment banking team. So Jake, if you want to chime in on anything that you've seen, by all means, go for it. Within the credit risk space, again, it's pretty hot right now. Across the board, we're seeing roles that we hadn't really worked probably in 4 or 5+ years, coming back to the table now where the demand is high. Model risk, model validation, across the board just seems to be, back in the swing of things. But yeah, Jake, if you want to touch on anything structured finance, if you see anything, if not, again, more than happy to, segue into something else.
Yeah, it's similar to what Kareem was saying as well. I mean, I know for us, the majority of what we have been seeing the most activity in terms of hiring and banks coming to us has been within M&A, as well as, capital markets. And in terms of structured finance, like leverage finance restructuring, just given what's been going on in the market over the last year, it honestly, when M&A was on a freeze and a pause there, that was the majority of where we were seeing a lot of activity. And on that end as well, with M&A kind of being on a pause in terms of deal flow, instead of laying off talent, what we did see is a lot of these, M&A investment bankers being moved internally to some of their structured finance, leverage finance groups, where there was the biggest activity. So honestly, over the last year, obviously M&A is very, very strong right now, but the leverage finance, structured finance space has definitely been something where we've seen a significant uptick that we haven't seen in years past.
And I can also comment on that from the legal side. We've seen a lot of our investment banking clients ask for structured finance lawyers, individuals with CLO experience, asset-backed securities experience. And I think, Chris mentioning a lot of fixed income and kind of credit trading, wouldn't be too surprised if some of that's on the structured finance side as well. So it does seem to be an activity within the finance space that is getting pretty hot again.
Here's an interesting question that we got from an alum. Is there a life sciences industry section within your firm? I've been working in the academic medical center administration field for 30 years and trying to determine if there's demand in that field and to what industry would my skills be transferable?
Yes, absolutely. We have one of the brands within the suite of brands under Phaidon is EPM, which is our life science brand. So I guess after this call, if you'd like, just send your resume over to the link and we'll forward that directly to that team and that brand lead. And they'll follow up with a call just to understand your wants, needs, and what might be a good fit.
Excellent. We have another question just came in. Is there demand for roles related to distribution strategy and insurance? Would they consider candidates based outside of the USA who need an H-1B visa sponsorship?
Sure. So not so much within the distribution side of things that we would cover in this room. Again, I have to know a bit more context as to what and where and what type of firm. Within the insurance market, that was sort of not as pun intended, I guess. That was our insurance policy throughout the pandemic. The insurance and actuarial services team, they were the ones kind of keeping the lights on in a sense. The market for actuaries is booming as a whole. I think insurance companies are starting to position themselves as a bit younger, newer, fresher compared to the past of what you think of traditional insurance. You have InsurTech, companies like Lemonade, that are popping up, and you can get a policy within 2 minutes sorted, whether for pet insurance, life insurance, health insurance, renters insurance, etc. So again, whether you're coming from a traditional insurance background, or you're a strong data scientist that was working at a technology business or fintech, or even at a sell-side institution, that whole realm right now is really jockeying for a bigger piece of the market and position themselves in a pretty attractive light. Great work life balance and flexibility. I think they're present across the U.S. in strong form, and comp is starting to keep pace with what we typically see within a sell side type of bank.
Got a question here. Since some skills are transferable, what is the best way to connect with all relevant folks on your team? In the link, there is a choice required for sector to be made. Selecting one might limit exposure to all relevant teams. And is there a way to let your team know if one is very actively looking?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry about that. I would just send it through to whatever's most relevant, and we share pretty often and send it across to whatever other sectors and teams. So very often we'll send it to the same chain, and we're actually all on the same chain. So we'll just flag it to one another following getting the CV and whatnot.
Yep. I also encourage everyone to feel free to add us on LinkedIn after this. I think that's the easiest way. It seems like business cards are out the window, and this is sort of the virtual business card. So again, message all of us, one of us, and we'll help you get to exactly where you need to be. And in that as well, if you say that, I'm actively looking, I'm passively looking, or whatever your status is, we're more than happy to, adjust our search based off that.
Awesome. So it'll find its way to the right place if they submit it. And as a reminder, I'm going to put that link back in the chat so everyone to make sure that they have it and can upload their resume. Excellent. Some alumni have told me they already have. Are there any other questions? We have just another couple of minutes. I'd like to thank everyone who joined us for this event. I want to thank everyone at Phaidon and Selby Jennings so much. This was super informative. If there are any other questions, give 1 more minute for questions. And I'm also going to put in the chat a link to our upcoming events calendar for alumni relations. We hope to see you at many of these. We have some really interesting ones coming up. We're going to be doing a Women of Color in Leadership panel discussion, Pride in Technology. We're also going to do an Ask Me Anything First Time Home Buyers edition, which I think is going to be super interesting. So make sure to sign up for those, and we'll see you there in our upcoming events. I don't see any other additional questions, so I want to thank everyone who joined us for this event. Kareem, do you have any final words you'd like to end on?
Yeah, I think just again, thank you everyone for coming out and putting this together, the team here, you guys at Baruch, and also obviously the alumni that attended. We love doing this. We love helping out. It is sort of a buyer's market, a candidate's market. So if anyone has any questions, just curious about what's out there, by all means, send us the question, send us a resume. More than happy to help. If you're completely stuck in your search, again, don't be a stranger. And yeah, again, big thank you to everyone here. We hope to see you again next year, and hopefully at some other events as well.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Kareem. And as someone said in the chat just now, good luck to all job seekers. May the force be with you. I think that's a great way to end the event. So thank you again, everyone. Hope to see you at another alumni event soon, and have a great rest of your evening. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thank you. By the way, I will send out an email afterwards with information about the speakers. It's also up on our event page from this event. So we'll send that info out.